The Fable franchise for me is probably one of my favourite franchises of all times. Look, it doesn't have the best story, it doesn't have the best characters, it doesn't have the best dialogue, and certainly the gameplay or the puzzles weren't amazing either. But the great thing about Fable, and one of the reasons why it's one of my favourite RPGs, is first off it is customizable to be fair, it does have a role-playing aspect, but more so, it's the atmosphere that it created. And so what I want to talk about today is Fable 4, the potential release date, and talk about all of that, because there's a lot of interesting things to glean that I think other people have definitely missed. The first part is the game studio which created Forza Horizon for the last, 10 years now, is going to be spearheading creating the Fable franchise. There's a few reasons why this might end in disaster. First off, I don't think that team's going to be very passionate about Fable. So yeah, I just don't think the writers are really going to be up to snuff to what you would expect a Fable game to really have in it, the feeling that it has. I hope that they pull it off. It's a very difficult, unique kind of game. I really hope they pull it off, but I don't really know if they're going to be able to. And part of that is because because Xbox doesn't want to use Unreal Engine 5, they basically have to use the game engine that they used for the Forza Horizon games. I don't think anyone's mentioned this, but in the Forza Horizon games, if you actually play it, I did, there's no facial animations and they all just have masks on. Just to avoid facial animations even being a thing, having to worry about lip sync, things like that. And so that really gives a testament to kind of how far behind the Forza Horizon engine is with even basic RPG elements like, faces. So do I really think that Fable 4 is going to be up to it? The things like animation, like even just opening up doors, is going to be something that game engine is going to have to struggle with because it just isn't designed for it. It's designed for cars to drive around in a racetrack. That's all that game engine is meant to do. So, we'll see. We've even from insiders, from leakers, which are pretty respected in the community, they've said basically with the dev team, because the past Forza Horizon devs and the current devs, basically people work on a 1-year contract. So that keeps things cheaper, right? However, you end up getting into the situation where you train someone for a year and then they just leave and go on to something else. So, the contracting thing for them has been a massive hurdle apparently. So that's part of apparently what might be affecting Fable 4 and potentially, creating a really good game. I did also, again, mention this a second ago, but I really think it's important to mention, look, within RPG games, what really makes a good game? Is it graphics? Does graphics matter at all? I'm going to argue no. Even the gameplay to a large degree doesn't matter. Mass Effect Andromeda had amazing battles, it had really good gameplay, but it was a terrible RPG. The story was garbage, the characters were garbage, the races were uninspired. The overarching villain was, just something that you'd expect from a Marvel Comics movie, and to be honest, even more two-dimensional than that. And so all that put together made a bad game, irrespective of the graphics being really good in Mass Effect Andromeda and the gameplay being good, just because, the parts that actually matter for an RPG, the story, the characters, it just wasn't there. And so the game kind of just felt hollow. And that's really my actual main concern with Fable 4, because the past Fable games, again, they didn't have the best gameplay. If you think about it, it's pretty simple. It was just like you'd press X to attack. Like that was generally as complicated as it got. You could block in the game, you could use magic. Most of the time, most people would just, quick attack things. So people didn't play it for the gameplay. There were some puzzles, they were decent puzzles, but more over than that, it was the world that was created. It was going into, I think at some point you went into someone's head or imagination. You traveled to different areas. Things evolved over time. All of that was unique things for that era of game, and to be honest, these days I haven't seen replicated many other times. Again, the feeling of the game was very unique in the Fable franchise as well, and that really is the important part that I don't know if they're going to be able to replicate. And again, I'm hopeful that they're going to be able to, but I just have my doubts. I did also quickly want to talk about two other quick things. First off, is Fable going to be on PS5? Most likely not, because it's an Xbox kind of exclusive, most likely. So yeah, it's basically going to be PC and Xbox only. And then of course the release date, we're kind of looking at in 3 or 4 years time at least, because between Forza Horizon games there's historically like a 3-year coming up to 4-year gap in between Forza Horizon games, and so we can expect that at least for Fable 4. But again, because this game engine just is not going to be suited for Fable 4 and they're going to have to modify a lot of stuff, again, we strongly suspect that Fable 4 is going to be probably pushing up to 5 years. But again, that depends on the scope. If they go for quite a small story, quite a small scope, it could not be as long. So the essential headcanon for this Fable 4 game, based on a leak, seems to be, and this does seem to be like a relatively credible leak because there was some gameplay that was leaked as well, but it was so blurry and so like trashy, and like basically it was basically nothing. I won't even show it, it was garbage. It was just someone walking around for 2 seconds, but basically the leak was basically that Albion got destroyed by a meteor, asteroid, whatever you want to call it, which was wished into existence by a mad king, which then took control of the Tattered Spire, and potentially your allies are on another planet which you can access via a demon door. Again, this is all like very speculative stuff, and I know it sounds a bit out there, but that is potentially what, you know, the leaks seem to be saying, and it seems to me to be a pretty early concept idea for the game that could have drastically changed because it's already been 3 years since that leak. We do also have the head of Xbox Game Studio, Matt Booty, which did acknowledge during a PAX West interview in 2022, basically saying that every time I see something, I say we should show this because there's a lot of cool stuff, but the team has made it very clear that they're not going to show anything until it's ready. And so, you know, from that we can say like, oh, okay, there's definitely progress. That seems to be what the head of this Xbox team seems to be saying. But again, they're only going to ever say positive things, they're not going to mention the negative stuff. Again, next thing to mention, because it has been at least since 2019 that the game's been in development to some degree, you know, it's already been 4 years, but all of that stuff is going to be concept art, it's going to be world building, it's going to be creating the characters. It's not necessarily going to be 4 full years of actual game development, but rather just the initial kind of conceptual stage whilst they try to figure out what direction to head the game in. There's also some other things that we can definitely say are likely. So it's likely going to be different weather systems like we saw with Forza. And of course, it's very likely going to be kind of an open world game, much like the prior Fable games. We do also know that there was going to be a Fable game that was like an MMO a few years ago that was scrapped, and that got pretty far into development. There was like actual get demos of that game that you could play, and so it's definitely the case that there's going to be unused assets from that. Apparently there's at least 200 people working on Fable 4 as well, so that's like a sizable amount. I did also go to the effort of checking the career page for the studio to get a good idea for if they've maybe switched over to Unreal Engine 5 and it just hasn't been reported or something, but from what I can tell, every single job mention C++, none of them at all mention Unreal Engine 5, and so it's very unlikely that in this time that they've started to switch over to Unreal Engine 5. Again, it does seem likely that they're going to be using their in-house Forza engine for an RPG game. Oh, and by the way, I encourage you to subscribe because subscribing helps so much. I only talk about like Elder Scrolls 6, Starfield, Fable, Mass Effect, those type of games, so RPG games that are like pretty decent. So for that reason, again, subscribe if you haven't already. It does help so much to subscribe, you have no idea, and like the video as well. Have a wonderful week. I'm out. GG. Bye bye.